welcome back to my channel. My name is Heather and it is that time again for another monthly reading wrap up, this time for what I read in August. I'm very excited to talk about some of these books, so we're just gonna jump right in. The first book that I finished in August was A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. This is my first Holly Jackson book and I really enjoyed it. I ended up giving this book 4.5 stars. I think it was very well written. I did kind of jump on the bandwagon because of the show coming out, which I have not watched the show yet, but I had owned this book for a while. It was just the push that I needed to actually sit down and read it, so I'm very glad that I did. I read this one very quickly. I feel like it grabbed my attention pretty quick. I loved the characters. The plot just wasn't like the craziest thing. I do feel like it was one of the things that I'd kind of guessed, but I still thought it was done really well. There were some elements of it that were very shocking, and I do feel like there were enough other viable options that it didn't feel like just so obvious. So even though it was something that kind of comes up as an option, it wasn't like I was so confident that I was like, yes, I guessed the ending. So I thought that it was good. I definitely want to read the rest of these books. I need to purchase them, but overall I really enjoyed it. I liked the writing. I felt like it was pretty fast-paced. It wasn't too overly detailed, which I feel like sometimes I do really like really detailed writing, but not so much in like a thriller or a YA mystery book. So overall I thought it was just a really good balance of everything that I wanted in a YA mystery. So we'll definitely be reading more of her books, starting with the rest of the series. I have yet to decide if I want to watch the show. I felt like I wanted to watch the show initially when I saw it, but then I don't know, I've seen some not so great reviews, which I think has kind of dampened my excitement about it. And then I'm just super confused about them choosing to change it so that it's set in Britain. Like, I don't know why that throws me so off, but there's just something about this book that feels very American suburb about it. And I can't really put my finger on exactly what it is, but there's just something that I feel like just feels like that vibe. And so I don't know, I don't feel like you kind of change the overall feel of it if you switch it to Britain. So I don't know, let me know if you have watched the show. I would love to know what you thought of it, especially if you are someone who like is a diehard fan of this book. Would be very intrigued to know your thoughts. Should I watch the show? Let me know. I do really like the main actor. I think overall it seems like it was cast pretty well just from looking at it, but again, I'd love to know your thoughts down below. Then the next book that I finished was actually an audiobook. This is City of Stairs by Robert Jackson Bennett. And I gave this one 3 stars. I have very mixed feelings about this book. First of all, I liked the audiobook narrator. I thought that it was very well done. She has a great voice. I liked it. I liked the setup of the world. I think that it was a very interesting fantasy system. There was a lot of politics going on. This is definitely a heavy political intrigue. There's not really romance in this book, so if you're someone who likes more romantasy, this isn't the one for you. This is more like a politics fantasy. I loved some of the characters. Sigurd, if you read it, is my favorite. He's so funny. He's this like intense bodyguard secretary guy, but basically, I don't know, it's really hard to explain exactly what the premise of this book is. Basically, you have this world where you had kind of these 2 continents, and one continent had gods, the other ones didn't. So the people who didn't have gods were like the slaves of the people who did have gods, but then they had this uprising and they managed to kill the gods off, and so now they are the people who have the other continent enslaved, and they are trying to basically shut down anything to do with the old gods, the religion, the mythical, anything. And so we're following a whole slew of characters that are involved in various ways in this. You're following primarily one who is basically, she's tasked with, she's kind of like a spy and ambassador type of a thing would be the best way. You're following her secretary Sigurd, who I loved, who's this really tough, intense guy, but he's just hilarious. And then you follow like an army general who's stationed in the main city that is now enslaved that used to have the gods. You're following a few characters from that city. And so it's just a lot of things going on. It's a very twisty. I will say I felt like the book was pretty slow to get into. It is super confusing to try and keep track of all of the names, all of the little details, and it is one of those books where they all tie back in, which I was really impressed with how she managed to take all of these things and twist them back in. The only problem is that does mean that you do need to remember all of the random details that are happening throughout the book. So it's kind of a double-edged sword where it really makes the ending fun if you can remember all of the names and places and things that were going on originally. So take that as you will. Content-wise, that was another thing that brought it down a little bit for me reading-wise. There was some further than Fade to Black, I would say. I don't know. Some people might consider it Fade to Black. It was a little further than I wanted it to go. Type of spice scene things that I definitely would say push it over to more of the adult fantasy realm than YA fantasy. It does calm down on those about halfway through the book. The majority of that is contained in flashbacks. So if you're trying to skip that, anytime it flashes back to her relationship with a character, you can just skip the flashback because I didn't feel like it added a ton to the story, the flashbacks. There just wasn't that much significant information that was happening in them. It was mostly just the spice scenes. So if you're trying to avoid those, that would be the best way to do it. There's some language. It's not like terrible. Really the spice scenes are more the content that was problematic. But yeah, so mixed feelings. I might continue it. I haven't quite decided. They are all on the Audible Plus catalog, so trying to decide. I think at some point, I'm currently listening to the Farseer trilogy, so I think when I get done with that, I might go back and just see how I feel about it. I do feel like the ending got me intrigued a bit more than I was throughout most of the book, so I might go back to it. But yeah, that is City of Stairs. Then I picked up Throne of Jade by Naomi Novik. This is book 2 in the Temeraire series, and I am loving this series. This one got a 4 stars from me. It's hard to know what to say about a sequel, but basically this one picks up almost immediately where the first book ends off. Maybe not, there's like maybe a 2-week gap, but it is pretty quick from the first book to the second book, and they kind of take off a separate thing. If you don't know the premise of the series, basically it is Napoleon, but like the Napoleonic Wars but with dragons. And so you're following it from the British perspective. You're following a British naval captain who gets roped into ending up having a dragon. But it's really fun how they use the dragons. The dragons are big characters, and I love the dragon characters. They're super fun. I will say this book was a little bit slower than book 1. I feel like there were parts of this book that were very frustrating, but in a way that the characters were very frustrating, so you were just feeling frustrated with them. So I don't know that that is necessarily bad writing. I just think it is a decision to go that route. So I didn't love that part, but I do feel like it wrapped up decent. I will say I felt like the last one had a little bit more of a cliffhanger than this one did. There are some really fun battle scenes in this one. There is a little bit more intrigue going on. This one's also pretty political intrigue heavy, whereas the first one I felt like was more just like training montage battle type of a thing. This one was a little more, we're getting into the politics of what was going on in the world and how some of the implications of what might have changed in the war with the dragons involved. So yeah, I'm loving this. I'm definitely going to continue it. I'm kind of pacing myself with this one now. I think I'm going to slowly work through it, but I love it, and I love the spines making a picture. This one has the head of the dragon with the little rider on it, so really having fun with that. But really enjoying this series. There are quite a few books in the series, and they're all pretty short, so it's a nice one to just go back and pick up a book here and there. Okay, and then the next one that I read was Five Little Pigs by Agatha Christie. This is my first Agatha Christie, no, second Agatha Christie. I'd listened to one earlier, but this one is a Hercule Poirot one. This one is kind of far down on the list if you're trying to read them in order. but I found this one at a thrift store, so I ended up picking it up out of order. But you don't really have to read Perrault books in order. I just decided to try and do that, but I'm obviously not sticking very well to it. But basically, the premise of this one, this girl shows up and she asks Perrault to solve a case that happened years ago. Like, what was it? 16 years. It's been 16 years since the murder happened. Her mom was convicted of poisoning her husband, and then you basically follow the nursery rhyme of 5 little pigs, and you have a suspect that fits in with every pig in the character, or in the thing. I will say, I feel like the 5 little pigs wasn't like a huge thing. It like uses a setup of him being like, interesting, we have the 5 little pigs, but then I don't feel like it went further than that. It was just like, oh, each of these kind of fit into that. So I don't know. It wasn't one of them where it felt like it was super themed around that. It was just like a fun little thing at the beginning. It's not like the ABC murders where the entire book is based around the ABC thing. So yeah, I don't know. I loved it. It's Agatha Christie. Hers is always good. I did give this one 4 stars. I thought this one was a really entertaining one. I don't know. At some point I will probably try and sit down and actually rank all of my Agatha Christie reads in a video, but yeah, that'll be really difficult when I do try to do that. So for now, 4 stars. It was good. I love almost everything by Agatha Christie. The only one that I haven't really enjoyed was Halloween Party. So yeah, go read an Agatha Christie. And then the last book that I finished in September was another audiobook, and that was Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. This is book 1 in the Farseer trilogy, which I said I was listening to. This is a high fantasy, is probably what I describe it as. That seems right. It's got kind of medieval-ish vibes. You're following Fitz, who is the illegitimate son of the oldest prince in this world. There's all sorts of things going on. There's this type of magic that runs mostly within the royal bloodline that allows you to like speak into people's minds and stuff like that. And you're basically following his life as an unrecognized illegitimate son of a prince. He goes and lives in the castle, and you're just kind of following his life. This isn't the most plot heavy book, but it's very fun vibes. So I do enjoy the books. I'm obviously already like continuing it, so I do really enjoy it, but it's definitely slower. So I did give this one 3.5. I feel like it took me a while to get really into it because I don't know, you're just following his life along for the majority of the book. Towards the end, it does pick up a bit of a plot, and you start to follow something with the plot, and that gets interesting. It gets a lot more fun, but it takes a while to build up to that. So it's definitely one of those books where I feel like there's going to be a slow build, but there will be a good payout at the end. There are several series within this universe following the same characters, so I'm not sure exactly how far we get with this specific trilogy. So that might be part of why it's moving so slow, is because it's like a setup for more than just the trilogy. It's also set up for several other series. So yeah, I'm enjoying it. I don't have a ton more to say than that. That is Assassin's Apprentice. All right, and then really quickly, I'm gonna go through my TBR for August, which is very big. I'm hoping I can do this. If you watched my previous video, it was my fall TBR, and you'll know that I have a very long fall TBR. So I am trying to make a decent chunk in that, along with reading for videos and stuff like that. So yeah, I have a lot of books that I'm trying to get through this month. We'll see what I can do with it. But starting off with a few books that are for a video that will be coming out hopefully pretty soon is The Wizard of the Crow. I am almost done with this. Like, I'll probably finish reading this today. It is kind of a lengthy book, but I'm working my way through this. This is by Ngugi wa Thiong'o. I think I'm saying that somewhat right. And it is a, what would you call this? A political satire, maybe? It's like a critique on some stuff, but in like a funny storytelling way. So yeah, you can expect a video that this will be involved in very soon. I'm almost done with this one, so that makes the TBR a little less crazy when you know that I'm like 60 pages from finishing this book. So yeah, that's book number 1 on the TBR. And then again for that video is Deranged as I Am by Ali Samir. I don't remember how to say that one. Oh, and I guess I should be saying translators. This one is translated. It's not on the cover. Oh, actually, I think he translated his own book. Is that correct? Yeah, so he translated his own book. This one is translated by Alice Banks. And this one is obviously very, very tiny. It is basically just following the life of a dock worker. So yeah, I think this is more of just like a character study, less of a plot book, but that's number 2. And then the last one that is for that video is The Last Brother by Natasha Oppenau. And translated by Jeffrey Strachan. I'm fairly positive I'm saying his name wrong. But this is a World War II book, but set in Mauritius, which is an island in the Indian Ocean. So, and you're following it through the eyes of a couple young boys. And I just think it'll be an interesting take on World War II from a non-Western perspective. So yeah, that's the last one for that video. You can expect those coming soon. And then the rest of these are the ones that I'm hoping to get through on my fall TBR and hopefully make a pretty good dent in that one. But the first one and these next 2 are some of the ones that I'm most excited for, but this is A House with Good Bones by T. Kingfisher, which I am super pumped about. It is a southern thriller, possibly horror, I'm not entirely sure. But basically it's about like this house where the mom kind of goes crazy or something like that, and that's about all I know, and I'm not too mad about going into this one pretty blind. So that's that one. And then the other one that I'm very excited for this month is Stuart Turton's The Devil in the Dark Water. I feel like this is a perfect one to transition from summer into fall with, because it is a thriller mystery book, but it's set in the ocean. They are on a boat. There's a detective and a sidekick. The detective is being transported to be tried for a murder that he may or may not have committed, or maybe it's not a murder, just a crime. And his bodyguard is trying to prove him innocent, but then it seems like there might be like a ghost or something on the boat. So this one feels like a perfect transition book, and I'm very excited. I loved 7.5 Deaths of Yvonne Hardcastle by this author, so I can't wait to pick up another one. Then the next one, kind of a different vibe, but this is book 2 in the Books of Umber. This is Dragon Games by P.W. Catanese, something like that. This is a middle grade fantasy series based around this guy named Umber, who is this inventor collector guy in medieval fantasy, and this boy named Hap, who they find and has no memory and is being chased by people and has all sorts of really cool magical abilities. And I'm assuming in book 2 we get dragons, considering it's called Dragon Games. This is technically a reread for me, but I read it for the first time in like elementary school, so it's been a while. But I've listened to the first one not too long ago. The second one is not on the Audible Plus catalog, but the third one is. Anyways, I will be reading this one. This should be a fairly quick read. It looks thick, but the words are very big and spaced out. Like, I don't know if that'll focus. Very big. So this will be a pretty quick read. And then the next one, I'm probably going to just be picking my way through over this month, maybe into October. But I definitely want to get through at least some of it this month. And that is The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde and Other Stories by Robert Louis Stevenson. Obviously, The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is a classic. It's very famous. But this is a bind up with that and a few other short stories. So I don't know. I feel like short story collections are kind of fun in the fall to just pick up and pick through. I don't feel like I've really been super intrigued by other types of short stories, but little like mystery, spooky ones, they have a fun vibe. A little quick short mystery is always a good time. And then the last one that I want to get through this month is an Agatha Christie. I feel like fall is just the prime time to be reading Agatha Christie, so I definitely want to get to this one this month, and I might pick up another one for October, but we'll see. This is The Big Four, and I'll just read the back. Framed in the doorway of Hercule Poirot's bedroom stands an uninvited guest coated from head to foot in dust. The man stares for a moment, then he sways and falls. Who is he? Is he suffering from shock or just exhaustion? Above all, what is the significance of the figure 4 scribbled over and over again on a sheet of paper? Poirot finds himself plunged into a world of international intrigue, risking his life and that of his twin brother to uncover the truth. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like you just don't really need to know that much going into an Agatha Christie. You just go on blind and go along for the ride. So yeah. That is my very lengthy TBR for this month. Stay tuned for the end of September, beginning of October when I do my wrap up to see how many of those I got to. I know a lot of people make their TBRs and don't really stick to them, but I try really hard to actually get through what I set for my TBRs. So, and all of these books are books that I really, really want to read anyways. So yeah, hopefully I will have thoughts for you on most of these, if not all of them, by the end of the month. But this has been a very long video, so I'm going to wrap it up here. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one very soon. Bye.